Okay, so very excited to have a guest on our first sort of video interview here. So here with Stefan Seeling, he's a coach over at Team Breck, and he's been coaching for quite a while and skiing for even longer than that. So Stefan, could you give us a little bit of your background, and then we're going to go into some more specific things about injury prevention, things that you guys do, and then specifically injury prevention things concerning the ACL and things like that.
Yeah, so I've been skiing for 31 years and started when I was really young, um, and went through a race program and with Summit Race Team back in the day, and my dad coached for a long time. And then I branched off and started doing slopestyle skiing and when I was about 14, 13 or 14. And then after high school, I traveled competing for a couple years after high school. Then took a break from competition and got into coaching. So I've been coaching since probably 2009, 2010. And I've been coaching with Team Breck specifically for 7 or 8 years, something like that. Yeah. And
Awesome.
I've coached slopestyle and big mountain.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And obviously enjoying it so far, right?
Yeah, it's great. Like it's the best thing ever.
And it was kind of ironic when we were talking earlier. You were saying that not you didn't sustain a whole bunch of injuries while you were competing, but actually while you were coaching and going out on days by yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I had a couple injuries that weren't huge when I was competing. It was like, well, I fractured some transverse processes on some vertebrae, and those healed back fine with no long-term effects. And a couple minor things, maybe a meniscus tear partial that actually healed back, and I got lucky while I was competing. So but yeah, then after a while, playing soccer and doing other stuff and just hard on the knees, the lifestyle. So it built up and I had I call it the EFL, every F and ligament injury. I got in my right knee. So I had like reconstructive surgery on ACL, posterior lateral corner, all kinds of different stuff in there.
The multi-ligament knee construction. I mean, fortunately, we live in like the best place in the world to have those surgeries because
Yeah.
the orthopedic specialists here, I mean, they specialize in knees because the rates of these types of injuries are so high. So maybe talk about how, I mean, obviously you deal with a lot of youth athletes, and this being really the country's hot spot as far as the highest number of very high quality skiing areas. We're grooming these athletes to potentially compete at the world out level and travel around just like you did. So how important is injury prevention in this age population that you worked with? And then let's maybe start talking about some of the things that you guys do specifically, both on dry land and in the weight room, and then also some skill specific stuff after that.
Yeah, we really, I mean, our goal at Team Breck is to make skiers for life. So really having injury prevention is going to make that possible. You can't ski, I mean, unless you get a full knee replacement when you're 30. You can't ski if you blow your knee out every year. So you can't be a skier for life. It's not fun if you're blowing your knee out all the time. So we really try to do a lot of injury prevention. Some of the stuff we do for dry land, we do a lot of grass drills. We do a lot of stuff that, let's see, what is it called? GMB, gold medal bodies, I think. We do a lot of like bear crawls and really strengthening in extremes of the range of especially hips and all the muscles surrounding the knee and the hip and ankles. We do a lot of foot stuff. Proprioception in the feet and the ankles is really big. So specifically for those, we do a lot of stuff to strengthen the glutes, a lot of stuff to strengthen all those stabilizers and really know where our knees are, where our joints are, so we can, have strong, stable joints. We do a lot of the stuff that you've shown on the YouTube channel and on the Instagram. We do like
Glad to hear
um,
that because I made that, and I actually didn't really consult you first. I kind of modified that from a different protocol that was actually made for soccer, and I took
yeah.
that and made it a little bit more applicable to skiing, and that's sort of how I generated a lot of those exercises. So that makes me feel kind of good to hear that it's already a lot of stuff that you guys do.
Definitely, yeah. So, and we actually really like to use bands. We put the bands around our knees or our ankles so
Totally.
that if we're doing side steps, so the grass drills that we do are a lot of side steps and squats, lunges, and a lot of lateral stuff to stabilize all those lateral movement that skiing has.
Hmm.
And then making sure that our knees are in line over the right part of the foot, not too far in front of the toes or too far behind the toes, but as little ankle flexion as possible in most of our exercises on grass drills to make sure that our hips are the strongest point, the most important hinge for sure.
Yeah, especially
Um,
since I mean their ankles aren't going to be moving all that much in the kind of boots that they're wearing anyways. So you've
yeah,
really got to focus on that hip strengthening and then quad strengthening as well, right?
totally. Yeah. And then a lot of our stuff to build on proprioception, a lot of our stuff goes through transfer chain. So, and I owe a lot of this to a guy named John Leffler, who's been in the county for a long time, but developing stuff with transfer chain. So, not thinking of your body as having a core that you have to strengthen with sit ups, but a transfer chain that transfers energy from limbs through all the way, and it's all connected. So, we do a lot of stuff to connect everything, hollow body holds, a lot of stuff to strengthen even serratus and obliques and everything, really connect everything. And there's a lot of twisting in what we do in slope style. So compound movements with twisting and jumping and power, we do a lot of that stuff. And that, I mean, yeah, it prevents injuries, not only in the knees, but in falling and knowing how to fall. We do a lot of falling drills actually on grass drills. So we'll tuck our chin and roll to the side. We'll roll back over, and we want to protect the neck and the head too on
Hmm.
top of that. So, cause there's always a risk of over rotating, under rotating, falling. Strengthening the neck is a big thing because you don't want to hit your head.
That,
Um,
that's really interesting. Maybe we should make some like how to fall videos. I really like that idea.
Yeah, it's actually honestly, Woodward is a great resource here.
Hmm.
It's a training facility that has like a spring floor and foam pits and trampolines and mega ramp into a foam pit. That helps a ton for air awareness. And there is actually injury prevention protocol that's specific to landing in a foam pit that's different from landing on snow. So that gets into a whole other
I see. I
area.
mean, you can do a multi-ligament reconstruction on a knee, but we still haven't made that brain reconstruction surgery yet. So
Yeah, exactly.
maybe give it a couple more years and maybe some more stem cells and maybe Elon Musk will get into it. We don't know, but yeah, I think that's something that I hadn't really even thought of was the falling practice and how to fall appropriately while sparing the neck and the head.
Yeah,
That's
neck and
really
head
cool.
and all the limbs. I mean, yeah, you tuck your limbs in tight and don't put your arms out. It's all, yeah, very, and you have to train your body to do it because when it's a split second when you're falling, you're not going to think of it.
So you need to have those motor patterns in place before they happen because I mean, we can talk about it all we want, but if you're not actively training those things, then it's just not going to happen on on the snow.
Exactly, exactly. Mhm.
Awesome. So we mentioned some of the different things that we do. So in the weight room, you guys do a lot of the different things that we saw in the ACL prevention protocol, and then we actually did an Instagram TV thing on the Bosu ball, some of the balance training that you guys also do, and I think that stuff is super interesting as well. And I'm excited to see more research and things come out, especially with skiers with the FIFA plus 11 plus protocol. I mean, soccer is obvious. Soccer or like a football in Europe would be the largest sport in the world. So there's tons of research on that. But
Mhm.
looking at all the papers and things that have been published on skiing, there's really not a whole lot there. So I'm glad that we've already got some things to kind of go off of. And it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of the really cutting edge things that maybe ahead of where the research is right now. I think it was also funny that you mentioned what did you guys call it with the
Transfer chain.
transfer chain in chiropractic school? We learn it as like anatomical slings or
Mhm.
myofascial meridians or anatomy trains. Is a guy named Tom Myers came out with a book talking about that. So it's so cool to see so many different areas and different specialties kind of coming to similar conclusions as far as, yes, the whole body is connected. We can't just isolate certain muscles and expect them all to work together properly.
Mhm.
So this is good. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of really nice insights into this stuff before they head out in the mountain, or something that'll make them a lot better on the mountain. So, can you give us a little bit of some of the specific things that you guys do on the mountain? Maybe some drills or things that you guys like to do, whether that be regarding the ACL and trying to sort of preserve that tissue and save the knees, or also, I mean, I really love how we went with some of the different fall practices things. Maybe we'll see some people practicing falling later on the mountain after watching this. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of walk you through like start to finish how the day sort of goes for us on a
Oh, sweet.
training day, which is really laid out to not only prevent injuries but maximize performance and have fun. I mean, because we want to be skiing for life, and the only way to ski more than a year is if you're having fun.
Yeah.
So we start out in the morning and we get a warm up. We do basically a warm up run, which could be in the park, could be out of the park. So on the way to the park, sometimes we'll just ski to the park and carve and get some foot and leg activation and know where your body is on the hill and feel your feet sliding. And a lot of that is unconscious, but just to get it going is good before you start sending yourself into the air. Sometimes we'll do like a squat to wedge. So you'll squat down with, minimal ankle flexion, even though the boot is, generally flexes the ankle anyways with forward lean. But we'll do squat to pizza, squat to wedge, 1 foot oscillations on the edges, and then switch feet, maybe just outside foot turns, like a javelin turn, some people call it.
Is this while static or while you're actively moving down the mountain?
Yeah, while you're moving, usually.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we get to the top of the park and we'll do a proper warm up. So we get to the park, we click out, take our skis off. Sometimes you use poles to stabilize, sometimes no poles just for balance. But we'll start out with the airplane and the helicopter. So you stand on 1 foot and then your upper body goes to horizontal or to parallel with the horizon. And we'll do the helicopter. So you pivot and let your hip do the rotation and stabilize with those hip muscles. And we'll do 3 of those on each side. Then we'll do the airplane where you same thing, your torso is horizontal or parallel with the horizon, and you'll tilt just with your hip. So try not to like rotate the spine or anything, but just tilt the hip. And that really, I mean, the kids love that one because they're like, oh yeah, I can feel it doing stuff. And I feel like my balance is improving and I'm stabilizing. And they can see the improvement every time they do it. They get a little bit better. So we'll do at least 3 of those per leg. Then we'll do a couple lunges, like a couple leg swings. So dynamic stretch and warm up with the whole leg and getting the quads and the hamstrings, everything activated. And then once we're really warmed up, we'll basically hop on 1 foot laterally. So we'll just jump back and forth on 1 foot. So we can get some of that dynamic, a little plyometric stuff going, and it's good balance. Do that on each foot. And then I came up with one actually just recently because we were skiing backwards, and when you're skiing backwards, it's a different lead change,
Mm-hmm.
and you're activating. It's all glutes, like, and you're twisted. And so what we'll do is we'll basically stand there with our skis back on, and here maybe I can show. So we'll put our skis on, and then we'll basically touch opposite hips and squat down and
Oh,
stand
okay.
up and twist like this. And you really stick your butt out, and that really gets some stretch in those parts of the glutes that are working on the outside of your hip that you really need to ski backwards and take off and land, and it's good for impact and stuff.
I've like just started riding switch a little bit, so that might be something that I might start doing quite a little bit too.
Yeah, so it's the opposite lead change of skiing forward. So if you're gonna turn right, you look over your right shoulder, and if you're going downhill, your skis are like you know, anyways, it's hard to explain without being on the hill and stuff, but
Yeah, maybe.
you kind of twist and touch opposite hips with your hands,
Hmm.
and then you squat down, and the further you stick your butt out, the more flexion you can get and the more edge control you can get.
Yeah, I love that kind of rotation preparation, trying to emphasize or really doing a good job of emphasizing that from the hips as opposed to like rotating with your whole back, right? I mean, I've noticed personally that I can rotate a little bit more one side than the other, and I haven't really figured out a very good sport specific drill to do that. So thanks for being an awesome coach and kind of giving me a little bit of a detail on that.
Yeah, that's a good start. And then once you start moving, you're actually, while you're going down the hill, you can take one pointer finger and point all the way across the hill over to the side of the run that's like over your shoulder, and point at it, watch where your hand's pointing, and then you rotate, look uphill, and then do the same thing again, trying to keep the skis parallel.
Oh, okay, so keeping everything parallel and then only focusing on rotation as opposed to turning and doing
Yeah.
things like that in conjunction. So,
Yeah, and sticking your butt out will actually, you'll go into a turn naturally.
okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love that. I love getting little personal tips, some tricks of the trade, if you will.
But yeah, and then that's the thing, is everybody has one of those dominant sides, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, their natural spin is going to be to the left.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're skiing backwards, their right eye is dominant, maybe, or whatever anatomically they got going on. They can ski looking over their right shoulder better backwards. So they'll spin to the right if they're going backwards. And that's pretty common. So we just work on getting both sides balanced equally.
I see. Man, awesome. So, what kind of stuff do you guys do in the weight room? Maybe even like outside of season, or let's say somebody is watching this video who is, not skied a whole bunch and they're trying to get prepared for a trip coming up to for their, vacation or something like that. So they may not be working on skiing backwards right now, but maybe some of these other drills and things like that could help them out.
We do a lot of interval training, or like high intensity interval training. I always go back to Herman Meyer, like he's a downhill guy. And I was like, how does he train? He was my hero when I was racing. I was like, what does he do? And I saw this interview. He's like, I just do a bunch of interval training, like so much running, cycling, even like stationary cycling, sprints, all kinds of crazy intervals. So we do a lot of that, and we do pretty heavy weights, because it once you're taking off and landing, a lot of times if you land in the wrong place, like too far or too short, I mean, your body has to absorb 2 or 3 times your mass, like you just impacting hard. So we'll go pretty heavy deadlifts, pretty heavy squats, really good, like some Olympic lifting, clean and jerk, and overhead press, a lot of stuff to get some feedback, high weight feedback through your
Mm-hmm.
body. Those are big. We do a lot of step up and step downs. So no ankle flexion on a box, however high you can go on a box. We usually do, it depends on the kid, but 32 inches is generally a good place to start. And you go, just start up with step downs. So you stand on top of the box and then lower down with no ankle flexion till your other foot touches the floor. And then you assist yourself back on top. And then you do that, and then step ups once you're ready, once you have the strength to do a bunch of step ups. We do a lot of box jumps. So like the box jumps that you had in the, I can't remember if it was YouTube or Instagram, but where you're jumping laterally, we start on
Mm-hmm.
top of the box. And then we actually do a time trial with it, however many you can get in 60 seconds. Or,
Oh, wow,
I
cool.
mean, it's hard to go 60 seconds. That we work up to it,
Mm-hmm.
but start out 30 seconds, then 40, then 60 is what we do. And you do as many as you can, and you get you get penalized for faults if you mess it up. So form's really important. But that's good, because then you get the falling off the box, and
Mm-hmm.
then you really explode off the ground as fast as you can, powerfully, precise, land back on the box as quick as you can, get to the other side, same thing again. So you're getting both sides lateral and some really good high intensity impact.
Nice. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
you really covered all of your bases with all this stuff, which is to be expected at such a high level program, really. So I think that's great. And so a lot of these people, maybe need to recognize like general strength is very important. Having that capacity to be under heavy amounts of load with the deadlifting, squatting, things like that. And then also incorporating a lot of plyometric movements, especially if you're going to be skiing more difficult terrain, bumps, moguls, things like that. And then also slope style, the terrain park, everything like that. So let's say we've got individuals out, maybe they live in the county, they live on the front range and are skiing, every weekend, the weekend warrior that is able to ski most terrains. What kind of advice would you give that person to maybe bring them up to the next level or significantly reduce their rate of injury?
Yeah, really the hip stabilization and balance proprioception. If you're a weekend warrior, you'll probably be past the risk of like the slip catch response injury.
Okay.
That's usually a little bit lower level athlete that has those issues. And the issues that they'll have with knee injuries are reacting to a rogue mogul, or you're hauling down in a zipper line and then there's a rogue mogul and you just run straight into the top of it and you're not ready, hyperextend your knee and there goes your ACL. Or you knuckle a jump and you blow your ACL. That's kind of where your risk is. So for those, yeah, reaction response is really big, the balance and proprioception. um so things like, I mean, honestly, soccer is great because you're always reacting, you're always having to have really fast reaction times and good balance and proprioception and lateral movement. That's a really good thing. Soccer's like the best cross training there is, in my opinion, for skiing. The only thing is the risk in ACLs in soccer is pretty high too. But the FIFA, what is it, the FIFA 11?
11, yeah, FIFA 11 plus.
Yeah, that's actually really good for both, honestly. I've used both. I use the FIFA 11 plus during our grass drills a lot,
Okay.
and we do that on the hill sometimes too. So even, before COVID, when we could jump and bump into each other's shoulders,
Oh,
we would do
cool.
that on snow. So you can react, you can feel impact and then react and land well. We even do, like with the balance balls, the Bosu balls, we'll get on top of them, stand on top of them and do tucks and do squats, even twist. And then we advance into, once you're like good, you just jump onto it
Hmm.
into a squat. And then you get points. We have a point system where we do a game. If you can hop it like 10 degrees at a time, gripping with your feet. If you get a
Okay.
360, you get a point. If you get a tuck, you get a point. Then we do turns on it. So you favor one foot or the other on the Bosu ball. It's pretty hard, but it's a good stabilizer and your legs are burning at the end.
I love
Um,
the gamification kind of aspect to it too.
yeah, totally. If you have someone you can do it, even challenging yourself is fun and to see your improvements. Oh, the other thing we do is vector lunges. So a
I
vector
remember you
lunge.
mentioning the vector lunges. Yeah, let's dive into that one a little bit.
Yeah, so it's so good for all the weird, I mean, you never know what angle you're going to land in, where your foot's going to be. You have to recover and your foot's in the air, whatever. You have all these weird angles. You need to have stabilizers in your hips ready to go. So you basically do a lunge, but you put your foot out and then, so you put your foot out, one straight lunge, and you picture the hands on the clock. So one time you go to the 12 o'clock, then you go to the 1 o'clock, then the 3, then the 4, then the 5. And then for the 6, you find a line on the floor and literally go 180. Your toes are pointed 180 away from each other, basically parallel with your shoulders. Squat down. And then it gets a little tricky because you do a little bit of a change where your back foot becomes, instead of being the lunging hip, it
Hmm.
goes behind and points the same direction. So your lunging foot changes. But then you do the same thing with the other foot. You go, and then the cool thing is you can track your progress too. You can say, well, this hip is a little bit stiff at 3 o'clock, but then the next week you have improvement there, and you do this with zero ankle flexion too. So all the flexion is at the hip joint. So you're stabilizing all the hips. You don't want to do the quads very much at all. Yeah. And then let's see. The other thing is we really strengthen our VMOs.
Mm-hmm.
So the teardrop muscle on the inside of the knee, on the quads, that's super important. It only fires like from like, what is it, 15 degrees to 0 degrees or something like that. And that
Yeah.
is super, super important for injury prevention in ACLs for sure. And then one thing I think a lot of people overlook is the calves, because the hamstring and the calf kind of like have the like handshake sort of
Yeah.
anatomy to them,
Mm-hmm.
how they link together. And I think a lot of people favor their hamstrings, but then their calves can't, support that huge mass. If it's like, finger here and then like 10 fingers here,
Mm-hmm.
then you have an imbalance and you're prone to injury that way. So we do some calf stuff too to make sure that our muscle mass is pretty balanced and we can prevent those injuries around those joints.
Yeah, especially with the gastroc being kind of a biarticulate muscle crossing the ankle joint and then going up all the way onto the femur in order to connect.
Yeah,
I could definitely see why that would be something super overlooked, because the ankle is in that sort of isolated position. But we have to recognize that the gastroc and the calf have an influence on the knee and knee stability as well. So,
totally.
I mean, these are super great insights. So I hope that people watching this really recognize that a lot of these insights are extraordinarily pertinent, not only to skiing, but even like a clinical practice, like what I do when people get injured. It's like some of these things that have been neglected could potentially be why you got injured, or why you don't have such a resiliency and capacity for skiing. I mean, I just hate to see stuff like people. I mean, some of my friends were in town visiting and we went skiing, and they're like, oh yeah, I went skiing, my first time a couple of years ago, and I tore my ACL. And it's just like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, like that would be the worst thing. Like I couldn't imagine coming back to skiing if
Yeah,
the first
probably
time I
not going to be a skier for life.
did. And they were like back out doing it. I mean, they weren't the best on the hill or anything like that, but I was like, man, those are a lot of trials that you have to go through in order to
Yeah.
get back to skiing. So I think a lot of this stuff, the preparation for skiing, not just sitting on the couch and eating Doritos all summer waiting for the snow to fall, but
Yeah.
really getting ready for that next season, increasing the capacity in the musculature of the hip and the capacity of the muscles around the knee, and then the gastroc and calf, like you mentioned too. So I think this is a ton of great information from a very, very high level coach. So we're going to try and get this out to as many people as possible to, I mean, hopefully really have a significant impact on the injuries to the people that, don't have really great mentors, kind of showing them the ropes and telling them what to do as far as things you should be doing on the hill as well as off the hill. So do you have any other sort of final advice to give to any skiers of all levels, regarding injury prevention, or something that some wisdom that you wish to impart on anybody, even if they're like a mediocre skier like myself?
Yeah, you don't have to live in Summit County or have a ton of money to like skiing or even be good at skiing. Like, honestly, what I tell my kids is in the team is the more you sacrifice for something, the more value it has to you. So if you're sacrificing time, putting in time and effort into the training and into the injury prevention, and
Hmm.
you're putting in pain and sweat and tears, and you're putting in, whatever you have, like if you have a little bit of money to buy gear, I mean, that's still a sacrifice. Then all this value goes up and up and up, and then it's something that you love for life. And so that's really what we were working for, and that's sort of how life works in general. Like the more you sacrifice for something or someone, the more value they're going to have to you. So that's kind of a life lesson of skiing itself that can apply to everything. And yeah, the more work you put in, the more value it has and the better it is, and you don't have to be injured or rich to ski.
Awesome. I mean, great final words, great wisdom to kind of impart on anybody watching this. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed it. I loved picking up a lot of these insights that I'm going to be definitely using in my dry land. Maybe maybe we should get together and make a couple videos for some more dry land training drills and things like that. And also a lot of stuff that I'm going to be using on the mountain probably this weekend, especially getting that switch riding down a little bit better. So thanks again, Stefan.
Yeah.
I really look forward to talking with you more about these topics and things that we can do to reduce injury rates.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Mm-hmm.